Cancer Cup just ended, but that just means it is already time to start preparing for Leo Cup. So today, let's go over the important track-specific information, what skills to look out for, and most importantly, stamina and debuffers. First things first though, the track is going to be on a right-handed Hanshin racecourse 2,200 meter track, so a non-standard race, with the conditions being firm ground, sunny weather, and during summer. So you can keep an eye out for any of those green skills to help you give a stat boost. For this course, there is once again a hidden stat threshold that will give you a boost in speed. In Cancer Cup, it was the stamina and guts threshold, but now for Leo Cup, you need to get 900 speed, which ideally you should be doing anyway, so you shouldn't really worry about this. But moving on to the track itself, there are a few important notes. Firstly, there are no downhills in this racetrack, which means that any skill that requires a downhill will not activate. There are instead 2 uphills towards the start and right at the end of the race. The other important point is where the late race begins, because here, the late race contains the entire final corner as well as the last straight. This is important because late race is when you want to activate all of your acceleration skills, since you're going to be speeding up for that final spurt. This means that any late race corner skills are much more viable now in Leo Cup than they were in Cancer Cup, since there is a bigger window. For example, in Cancer Cup, you only had a 33 meter window to activate a skill if it only activated on a corner late race. However, in Leo Cup, skills such as Let's Pump Some Iron will have a much better chance of activating. Or alternatively, there are other acceleration skills such as Taiki Shuttle's Shooting for Victory, which also activates on a corner late race, but instead of needing to be in 6th, you need to be between 3rd and 5th. Of course, these pale in comparison to Redshift, which will activate on the final corner or later, even in the final straight. But the nice thing about this is that because the entire corner starts only in the late race, Redshift will never activate quote-unquote too early. And then, if you're a frontrunner, as usual, memeing and scheming will also be very good. So when it comes to legacies, you should obviously be looking for Maruzensky for that Redshift, and then either Seiyun Sky for frontrunners, otherwise Taiki Shuttle for pretty much everybody else, with Major Orion as another option for the lates and the end closes because of those position requirements. The other important part for that final spurt, aside from your acceleration, is making sure that you have enough stamina. The stamina threshold for a medium race is almost just as high as the long races back in Gemini, and that's because now on a medium race, Nice Natures can have a field day with their gold stamina debuffs, Mystifying Murmur and All-Seeing Eyes. But now also, Wedding Maya no Top Gun is in the game, who also gets Mystifying Murmur. So in theory, someone could field all 3 gold stamina debuffs on top of all of the white stamina debuffs, and there is a non-zero chance that you could see somebody, not just 1, but 2 people doing this in your lobby. So the question is, how do you prepare for that? Of course, lots of stamina and gold skills will, for the most part, alleviate this issue, with the most obvious gold skill being Swing Maestro. And if you happen to get the Best Foot Forward event, you can also get Breath of Fresh Air, although it is a bit RNG since it activates on a straightaway, which means that it could only trigger right at the end of the race when it's too late. If you choose to make a Pace Chaser though, they do unfortunately require the most stamina, but thankfully, they also have the most gold skills available to them on top of the previous 2 mentioned. They have access to Gormand from the Event Special Week card, and also Race Planner, which comes innately on Daiwa Scarlet and Agnes Tachyon, and even the new Daiwa Scarlet support card, although it's not really worth using that card since it is a power card when you probably want speed and stamina instead. In fact, depending on the gross of the UMA, you would want to either go with 4 speed cards and 2 stamina cards, or 3 speed cards and 3 stamina cards. As for the frontrunners, on top of Swing Maestro and Breath of Fresh Air, certain fronts have some built-in gold recoveries like Summer Maruzensky's Restless or Mihoro Bourbon's Trackblazer. Speaking of Summer Maruzensky, I hope that you're all ready to see a lot of her. Now, why do we need so much stamina? Like we said, unfortunately, medium races are where the debuffs shine, and so everyone is really scared. But this brings us to an interesting prisoner's dilemma of sorts when it comes to debuffers. Remember, a stamina debuff only works when it actually drains the UMA's stamina enough that they can't even carry on the race. If, however, they are well prepared with enough stamina, then the debuffs won't really do much. Now, if we were to think of the quote-unquote perfect storm of debuffers and aces, that would mean that there is a Wedding Mayano and Nice Nature with all of the gold skills and all of the white skills for all of the different running styles. So, hypothetically, let's say that you bring these 2 perfect debuffers, Wedding Mayano and Nice Nature, and the opponents, both of them, also bring the same 2 debuffers, and all 3 of your aces are also fully prepared for this lobby of debuffers. Max out stamina with a bunch of gold skills. Then that means that technically speaking, none of your debuffers are doing anything, and it's basically down to a 1v1v1 between the aces that are all prepared for the debuffs anyway. So, knowing this, what if one person decides not to bring any debuffers at all, instead fielding more aces? Sure, that person is still getting hit by 4 debuffers, but now the effectiveness of the debuffers for the other teams are going to be less, which means now they technically have too much stamina than they need. So they could have gotten away with training less stamina and more power or something like that, or wit. Meanwhile, assuming that one person that is using 3 aces is able to hit the stamina requirements still to make them immune to a field of 4 debuffers, now you're going up against a 1v1v3. But again, that's in a perfect scenario where people are actually able to hit 1200 speed and also like 1000 stamina with the gold recovery skills and enough skill points for other mid-race skills too. But here's another scenario. What if you are the only one running debuffers in the entire lobby? Sure, if the opponents didn't prepare at all for debuffers, then you'll have a field day. But reminder, you're the only one running debuffers. So out of the then 6 opponent aces that you'll be facing, are you willing to take the risk that none of them prepared for only a single pair of debuffers, which is significantly easier than preparing for 4 debuffers? Because now, if your debuffs don't do that job and your ace is fully spec'd out for that full stamina situation when it's not needed, it could be that the other 6 aces will be much better spec'd out for the job. Now, to be fair though, like I said, this is under perfect scenarios. Odds are people will not be able to have enough stamina and gold skills to tank out everything. There will be a compromise, but also at the same time, odds are people will not have Wedding Mayano and Nice Nature. Never mind 2 people having them and both of them being in your lobby. All of this to say that essentially, yes, there will be debuffers, but I don't think that we should be that scared for the quote-unquote perfect debuff storm. Yes, you should have some high stamina and gold recoveries, but you do not need enough to tank a nuclear storm. I know some people like to reference the global reference document made by Urzi, which, don't get me wrong, is a great document, but I think seeing a table that just says just get 1200 stamina plus 2 golds is a little bit intimidating, and I think a bit of an overreaction. Now, all of that being said though, I think that for yourself, including at least a single debuffer is still likely a valid option. And in fact, I think that's what most people will be doing, and that is the scenario that we should be preparing for. Since even a single debuffer by itself might still get the job done because of how harsh the supposed requirements are for stats. That you might run into some people that are only just scraping by when it comes to stamina. Or maybe they just get lucky, or you get lucky, and they don't trigger Swing Maestro. Now that we're a decent amount of time into the game, I think it's safe to say that many people will have access to Nice Nature. So you can expect to see her a lot. The other debuffer being Wedding Mayano though, as a 3-star who had a split banner with Air Groove, the possibility is there, but like I said, I think it'd be rare to find someone running Wedding Mayano and Nice Nature as debuffers, and then forget about seeing 2 people doing that in one lobby. But also, let us not forget about the biggest debuff in the game, which is RNG. If you do go with 1 single ace and 2 debuffers, are you willing to risk the chance that you could lose to a random late start, or your Uma getting blocked, or one of your skills just not activating? So having at least 2 aces with 1 debuffer Nice Nature is likely going to be your best bet and the most common thing that we will be seeing. In fact, here is an example of the aces from a Japanese player who had a 92% win rate in their first Leo Cup. Now, to be fair, take this with a grain of salt because early Japanese championship meetings are much different from the global server, since we now have the power of hindsight. Back then, they were still sort of figuring things out as they were going along. But this player had a Summer Maruzensky as a front with a Pace Ogre cap and a debuffer Nice Nature. The first thing you'll notice is that the stamina on the Maruzensky and Ogre cap seem ridiculously low. Although they do have some gold recoveries each, yes, but when it comes to global though, you could look at this and say, that's nowhere near enough, right? And that's likely true because we will likely have more people running Nice Natures. But using that as a baseline, you should try to aim for around 850 to 900 stamina, of course, with some gold skills, while still trying to hit maximum speed as well as some good power and wit. Now, one way to help potentially avoid the debuffs is to try and have your 2 aces be different running styles if possible, because that way it is harder for a debuffer to hit both of your aces at the same time unless they specifically chose enough skills to cover your 2 running styles. Reminder again that those high stamina requirements are based on a perfect debuffer. So yes, you probably will be hit by Mystifying Murmur and All-Seeing Eyes, but are you also going to be hit by subdued pace chases and also flustered pace chases as well? So basically, TLDR of the Leo Cup preparation is that get Redshift, get another good acceleration skill on the corner from a Legacy, get about 850 to 900 stamina and some gold skills to tank out the potential Nice Natures, but don't be worried about that many Nice Natures. Remember, you still need some speed and power to actually win the race. And last tip is pull for Meisho Dotto because she's cute.